How'd they get you to come down here?
Dylan sent me.
We
As
can.
the line manager, he's in St. George this
Oh
week.
yeah, he's down there with his
Okay.
kids for spring break,
Yeah.
that's right, yeah.
So,
Yeah, he just sent me today and said it's 56 degrees, the water is, he took his boat down there.
yeah, I know.
So he's like, well, spring break, cause last week was gorgeous. too.
Oh, yeah.
And this week he says 56 degrees, and he just.
He's so upset.
And the water is, so.
Every time he goes on the boat, it seems like it gets rough.
It follows him, I know, that's what he says.
There's a little bit of a delay there.
There's a delay.
Is there sound on that on the TV?
I don't know why there's sound on the TV.
I think it was us just delayed.
Who knows?
Does that help?
Hmm.
Never had that before. We're ready to go. Okay, sounds good. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for this roundtable discussion. We hope that it will be helpful and informative for everybody. I'm gonna turn the time over to Jared Jackson, who is on our safety committee here at UMA and is also our 2024 UMA board chair.
Great, thank you. I just want to welcome everyone and thank you all for participating with this safety roundtable. I think we'll just start off with doing some introductions. We'll go around the table. And maybe when we get to Liz, she can make sure our folks online can introduce themselves as well. And then I'll get us started on our discussion for today. So Jared Jackson, my day job's a mine manager at the phosphate mine there in Vernal, but also happy to be here and participate with the mining association. So should we go around this way?
Hello, everyone. My name is Larry Lloyd. I'm the safety director for Mountain West Industrial.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Trumbull. I'm with Mine Safety and Health Administration, EFSMS. Not enforcement, compliance and assistance is what I do. That's all I have right now.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Kieran McRae. I'm the mine operations manager up at Kennecott, responsible for roads and haulage.
Tom, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, sorry about that. Tom Henry, Materion Natural Resources down in Delta, Utah. I've done lots of things down here, but right now I'm doing sustainability for Materion in general. And I think Materion's got a few people also online, either on the YouTube or in this session.
And Tyler, it looks like you joined us late.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me? I was trying to get my
Yes.
Zoom to work. Yeah, my name's Tyler and I'm the mine engineer for Materion out at our beryllium mine.
Sean Davis, I'm with Bodell Construction,
Okay, great, thank you.
President, CEO. Bodell.
Well, great. Thank you again. Thank you all for participating. And I got to apologize. About a week ago, I lost my voice and it's never really come back all the way. So I'll try to make sure you can hear me. Hoping it comes back someday. But what we'd like to start out discussing today, this stems from a conversation that Mike had with us last time he was here at the Utah Mining Association office. There was occasionally you hear about some confusion between MSHA regulations, OSHA regulations. In particular, when you have a mine operator and you have contractors that are coming onto the mine site, and some may be more familiar with MSHA regulations, some may be not so familiar with MSHA regulations. And how do we kind of bridge that gap and make sure everyone's all under the same standards, the same safety culture, so to speak? Because I know for myself as a mine operator, some of the biggest concerns I have, we'll have some new contractors coming onto site, and I'm really not familiar with what kind of safety culture are they coming from. How familiar are they with MSHA regulations? What's their training program like? So it's one of the biggest concerns I have. And I know from some of the contractors we visit with, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming for them to come onto a mine site if they haven't done that very often and get up to speed with some of those with all the requirements and regulations. So we thought we'd maybe start with Mike giving us some examples of concerns he's seen, issues he's seen, confusion you've run into regarding this topic, and then open it up to everyone else. What issues have you seen out there? What questions do you have? Well, we have Mike here can help us to address those.
Yeah, so some of the issues we're seeing out there in the mining community is fall protection. OSHA's got a requirement that if you're over 6 feet, you have to be tied off. I'm not real adversed, or I'm not real educated on OSHA regulations. I've been in mining so long, I know the mining regulations. Under OSHA, it's 6 foot. Under MSHA, it's if there's a danger of falling, you gotta have, your fall harness on, you gotta be protected. There is a program policy letter out there that says in some instances, we will accept OSHA's fall protection rule, but it's up to the eyes of the observer. It's up to the inspector or the person looking at the situation. Where are they gonna fall? What are they gonna fall onto? Another question I had the other day was, I had a mine operator call me about ladders, because I know that the OSHA regulation on ladders is changing. Based on what he told me, and I did some research on it, I think by 2036, you can no longer rely on a back cage on the OSHA side. MSHA's regulation says if the ladder's more than 30 vertical feet, you have to have a back cage, and it has to start 7 feet from ground level up. And he says, well, what about fall protection on that ladder? That's what OSHA is going to require, some type of a fall arrest for OSHA.
It slides up and down.
You've got to have something under the OSHA regulations. What's MSHA going to do with this? Don't know. Right now, we're still stuck with 30 CFR and what it says in there in the plain wording of the language. So another thing Jared had wanted me to talk about was citations to contractors, over the road truck drivers going onto a mine site in their truck. You're predominantly 48 with the Utah Mining Association. You don't have a lot of 46, is that right? Am I correct?
Well, most
Little
part,
bit.
I mean, a little bit
A
there.
little bit of 46. Where we're seeing an issue is the over the road truck drivers or the visitors, vendors coming on your site, getting a load of material. And not wearing their seatbelts in their trucks, their over the road trucks, their dump trucks, even in their light vehicles. And the inspector's wise to that, and they're stopping them and they're writing that company that owns that truck a citation for not wearing a seatbelt. If they find several of them, they're going to turn around and write the mine operator citation as well. So one thing I can say is make sure that you have your seatbelt policies in place and you strictly enforce them. You have a disciplinary policy for your own employees. If you have a contractor that's working on your site, or you have a visitor vendor coming to your site and they choose not to wear their seatbelt, I hate to say it, I'd tell them to find work elsewhere. Minimum fines right now, from what I've heard, was around 400 up to 1,200 to a contractor. And then one mine operator was cited at about $9,000. So
For
something
seatbelts.
for seatbelt, not enforcing a seatbelt rule. Now, there was some other litigation that happened with that, and things got reduced and changed, but they're classifying those trucks as haul trucks, and it's under that standard. I know when we had the accident up at Smoky Canyon, they classified that fuel truck as a haul truck. So something to think about on that. The other issue we're seeing is contractors right now. I'm hoping it's getting better, that easier for you guys to get employees, but you're getting employees jump from one company to another. And people think if you're MSHA trained at one company, you can go to the other company and go right to work. And that's not correct. There's no reciprocity. They have to be trained from their current employed company that they're going to work for. They have current training, whether it be annual refresher or whatever from the previous company, and say they had it yesterday. It's no good today if they change companies. You have to retrain them according to your time.
Would you bring them in as an experienced miner and just bring them up to date with your company's policies and procedures, and then bring them under your ID?
You could, depending upon what they are and what industry. If it's 48 and they've had their new miner, yes, you're going to bring them in under experienced miner. If it's 46 and they haven't had 1 year's worth of mining experience, you have to give them the first 7 subjects of your 46 plan before they're assigned work duties. But 48, yes, if they had new miner and it's less than a year, you still bring them into the experienced miner umbrella. Anything else on that?
So the unions offer some employees 48. How does that work?
Depends on what they're offering. If they're doing new miner, that's fine.
Okay,
But if they're doing annual refresher and that person is not currently employed, it's not worth the paper it's written on.
okay,
If you guys send them to the union as an employer and you've employed them, that's fine too, because contractors can be trained from anybody's Part 48 plan.
right.
For under
But it has to be
48.
underneath the direction of whoever the contractor is.
Well, yeah,
Essentially, is
yeah,
essentially
essentially, yes.
what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
okay.
Can the union bring them with the introductory to workplace environment? Do they have that option to get?
Yes, so if the union does complete training, so if they
They
do
will-
all of new minor,
They will do the
including
workplace.
a introduction to the work environment, and they weren't employed, which they can get new minor and not be employed, and it's still valid. Then you hire them, then you're still required to give them experienced minor training.
Okay,
But now, let's change that. If you hire them and you send them to the union to get training, all right, and they get everything at the union, then you can put them to work, as long as you're paying for that training at that time. Then they're considered your employee. There's another catch in there. Let's say that I go to the union and I get my new minor training, short of introduction. Then when I come to you, my new minor is not complete.
it's partial.
Now you can give me the introduction and that is complete.
Okay,
So, but if they're just going to a union and they get annual refresher just to get annual refresher and they're not attached to an employer for that annual refresher, it's not valid. Good question. Anything else on that online?
so if we offer a service to train, so in the past, we offer a service to train a certain number of individuals that may or, currently we don't have an employment for them.
Okay,
Went down, and so we used to do it on the Indian reservation. Would train a group of people down there so that we had availability of workforce for there. So they're trained underneath our plan, but they're not currently necessarily a current employee. That would still be valid under our plan if and when we hired them. Offering it kind of as a service to them down there. In the past, have they used it with other employers? I don't know.
okay, so. You never, you gave them training just because you wanted a ready workforce down there?
Yes.
So with that. Trying to think of a scenario. So did you give them new minor?
Yes,
New minor, so you gave them the full 24 with
24.
the mine site tour and completed the training,
the mine site tour was not done.
then it's not complete.
Okay, so we could offer the mine site tour when we
To
employ them.
complete it, yes.
Okay,
So
complete
they,
it.
I mean, once you have completed new minor training, you have up to 3 years to
To do
gain
your
1
mine
year's
site.
worth of experience. If you don't gain 1 year's worth of experience within that 3-year period, you have to retake new minor. Now, it can be equivalent experience. Contractors, you may have a guy that's running a bulldozer at the mine site, right? He leaves, you're still working for you, but he's running a bulldozer off the mine site. He's doing the same task.
Mhm.
That can be counted toward equivalent experience for the 1 year's worth of.
Oh, it can be.
experience. It
Okay.
can be, as long as it's equivalent. I mean, if it's not, you can't count that, but you can count that forward.
Even though it's not on the mine site, but if you
Mhm.
still
It
operate.
can be equivalent experience.
Okay.
So for those guys down there, I would say. You gave them, they're not complete,
Right.
so. How long ago did you train them? That's another question.
Someone would have been within the last year.
Last
We
year.
may employ them. When we bring them up here. So my question is that still a worthwhile thing to do?
I
And
can't answer that because it's
Yeah.
not complete training.
Right.
Once it's complete training, that's when the time clock starts.
Okay. The complete training just includes that mine tour.
Yep, it's
That
the
you'll-
full 24
Right.
hours, including the introduction to the work environment.
And different training plans are different regarding how much time that introductory period is. Could be
Yeah, I
8
mean-
hours, it could be.
Well, there
4
is, in 48, there's no time requirements listed on the subjects within,
On the training plans.
new minor. But if you're gonna train somebody short of introduction, give them the 24 hours. Because then when they show up at this contractor, or this mine site, their hands aren't tied to a set time limit. They've got to cover the subject in their plan and then they can go to work. So I've had contract trainers or co-op trainers or state grants, well, I'm only gonna do 16 hours. So why is that? New miner's 24 hours. Well, we're not doing introduction. I says, is it gonna take 8 hours to do introduction? do 24 hours. Your plan has no time requirements within new minor for the subjects. All the training is 24 hours. You can go over the 24 hours, give them 24 at the co-op trainer. If you're training another company, let's say that a company come to Bodell and wanted you to give them a new minor training. Give them the 24 hours. And then if they have another trainer that can take them out and do an introduction, that's fine. There's no law against giving more training than less.
Okay.
Is there a time frame as far as like with Sean, if you trained them to that point 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but they didn't get the site specific, the mine introduction? Is there
So
a time frame for that to when you have to complete the training?
there is not.
Or not?
Yeah, I mean, you could give them partial new minor training today and I hate to say 10 years down the road, you could complete it. But that 3 years is once the training's been completed to accumulate that. I don't know as I would do that. That's probably not best practice because what they learned a year and a half,
Right.
2 years ago is probably gone. I mean, it can be done, but I'm not, there is nothing written in the law on that. It's once it's completed, it's the 3 years. Your experienced miners too. So if you hire an experienced miner and they haven't been out of mining for more than 5 years on Part 48, there's no time requirement. You cover the subjects within your plan from an approved instructor, they can go to work. If they've been out of mining for more than 5 years and you're hiring them as an experienced miner, then you still give them experienced miner, but it's 8 hours.
Oh, okay, so there is a 5-year rule
There is.
for and they just have to have worked in a mine during some point in time and during those last 5 years.
If it's more than 5 years, it's still experienced miner, but it's 8 hours of training. I've had out in Nevada, people say, well, their annual refresher, they've been out of mining for so long that now they got to take new miner. No. Once you've had new miner training and a year's worth of experience, you're an experienced miner for life. Now, how long have they been out of mining? So just something to remember.
Okay, and so do they always have to have had the new miner training? So there's several people worked in the mine that don't have a copy of their new miner training.
No.
Combination. Okay,
But it's up to the company or the mine operator, the contractor to determine what their status is. There's a lot of companies, if I went to work for Rio Tinto tomorrow, they're gonna give me new miner.
yeah,
you can-
Rio Tinto does regardless, gives them the 24-hour new miner for every new
Yeah.
employee.
Then it eliminates the
Okay.
question.
Okay.
Mhm.
You can always give more training than less.
Correct.
Most of the
Right.
mines out in Nevada, if I was to hire on, I mean, they've been in mining since the mid-90s, but they're gonna give me new mine regardless,
Absolutely.
because it eliminates that question.
Yeah. And it's simple, if they can produce the paperwork that shows they have the new miner training, then we might go with the experienced miner, but if they can't produce any paperwork, we don't just take their word that, yeah, I've had that new miner training before. They've got to have their paperwork for us.
And you can, it's up to the mine operator or the company to make sure they're the ones that have verified that they're an experienced miner. Pay stubs, just a resume? I don't think so. Pay stubs,
Mhm.
something to say, hey, yeah, this person worked at this site for this amount of time and did have new miner training.
Mhm.
So it's the responsibility of the hiring company.
Yeah, we try to get that 5,023, whatever the form, so
Mhm.
we're very confident that it was done.
Is there a database now on keeping that MSHA has on keeping records for any of these employees?
MSHA doesn't house any of the records.
They don't house,
It's
they
the
don't
com-
house anything at all, so it's just strictly on
it's-
whoever they worked for or whoever is
So
training them, okay.
under Part 48, you're required to keep at least 2 years worth of annual refreshers and then, of course, their task training records so that you can say, hey, yeah, this person was trained, but you have to keep at minimum 2 years worth of annual refresher records. Once a person leaves your employment, that miner is entitled to a copy of their records. If they ask for them, they're entitled to that copy of their records. But after 60 days, you can throw them away if they're not coming back. You don't have to keep
60 days.
60 days.
Okay.
Under Part 46, which nobody in here is 46 mine operators, your contractor.
Contractor do a little
Your
bit.
contractors that hold Part 48 plans. So because you hold that plan, that training's valid at both 46.
46 and 48,
Yeah,
okay.
you don't need a
We don't have
46.
to retrain.
No.
46 plan, yeah, okay.
Yeah, under the 46, they have to keep all records. But not you guys, because you're part 48.
Oh.
I don't want to confuse the water too much with 46 and 48 because your eyes will roll in the back of your head.
Okay, so we're required to keep the refreshers for 2 years.
Yep.
And then offer up, if an employee asks for them, if it's less than 60 days since they've been gone, we
Yeah.
give it to, otherwise we can.
You can get rid of them.
Okay.
Wow. Do keep the task training records, because
Right.
if there's a question, at least you have something, right? You don't have to keep a guy's annual refresher record for 20 years, or their new minor record or any of that. So. Anything else?
What other issues or questions have you run into? Anybody? Situations you've run into that are confusing? I've got kind of an interesting example I'll throw out that's just recent with us there at
Okay.
Simplot. We've been partnering with UDOT to reroute the highway that goes through the mine property there. And of course, UDOT's not gonna be familiar with MSHA regulations, and their contractors may or may not. And so we had a lot of questions about that. You know, we've basically given them a new right of way through the mine property. We did a lot of the dirt work for them. They're bringing in contractors to compact that dirt work and do the last, get up to final elevation, pave it and all of that. And so it was confusing enough for us. We actually got with the Salt Lake City MSHA office and got some clarification, and they were willing to give us something in writing that states that as long as we keep UDOT and their contractors confined to that corridor, to that right of way, so we got it bermed off, barricaded off, they can't stray onto the mine site. They do not fall under MSHA's jurisdiction at that point. If they strayed off onto the mine property, yeah, they'd be subject to all the MSHA regulations, right? So we actually have that in writing. The reason we did that is because we may have an inspector that shows up not from Salt Lake, maybe from Colorado, Wyoming, Arizona, you know, we've seen from different areas. We can actually show them this letter that specifies, here's the situation we're in. And they have a contractor who's actually gonna be crushing. But what we were told, as long as they don't haul that crushed material off site, they still do not fall under MSHA. So just if you run into a weird situation like that, that's just a suggestion I have, is you get with the Salt Lake office and can help you figure out exactly how does this gonna play out.
Yeah, Steve, the supervisor, Steve Polgar, the supervisor there in Salt Lake's pretty good. He'll answer your questions and he'll help you through it.
Yep.
That was funny. We had a conversation in the office when I was in there today about that same thing with crushing screening plan. If you have a crushing and screening plan and you go into a subdivision and you're crushing and screening that material and none of that material leaves the site, it goes right back into that project and not a pound of it leaves, it's not under MSHA jurisdiction. But as soon as you sell that product and it leaves that site, it's under MSHA jurisdiction.
Why is that? What
It's
is,
not considered mining. It's
gotcha.
just- That's in the regulations and the law. It's not entering, well, let me put it this way. It's not entering or affecting interstate or intrastate commerce.
Okay,
It
so
has
is
to
that whole
affect
area not under MSHA or just that operation? So
any place, so like we've got one out in Harriman out at the end of
Okay.
126 South. That question came up. There's probably, I don't know how many acres are there, but it's a 10-year project. And there's a contractor company in there doing the crushing and screening for the developer. And none of that material is leaving. It's not under our jurisdiction. And if it takes 10 years, it takes 10 years, but it's under OSHA.
okay,
Difference between OSHA and MSHA. OSHA is, I think, a town in Iowa or something. I don't know. No, reactive and proactive, right? MSHA is going to show up and find what's wrong, and they're going to point out what's wrong before somebody gets hurt. Generally, OSHA is reactive. But that particular site, because nothing's leaving that property, just like Jared said with his road job, that crushing and screening, they're pulling the material out, they're processing it, they're putting it right back down on the road. It's not our jurisdiction. It's not considered mining.
interesting.
Yeah, well,
So what you're,
Very neat.
even if people are in that, so if a contractor comes into that area, you're still required, because it's on your site, to be MSHA trained. But if they're doing that operation for that piece, or is it that whole section's been segregated?
yeah, so UDOT is actually contracting out, you know, this project, their portion of it. So we'll have this right of way set up, bermed off from the rest of the
Everything
mine
in that right
operation.
away
They stay in there. They don't have to have MSHA training. They don't have to
for
follow MSHA
deliveries or
regulations.
anything else.
Anything, as long as it's in this right of way, basically, doesn't fall under MSHA.
They're considered non-miners.
So
They're gonna need to give them site specific. Hey, this is where you're
Right.
at, don't go anywhere else. But as for comprehensive training, new miner, experienced miner, annual refresher, it's not required. They're considered non-miners.
So if a mine were to build a new facility and during the construction, can they segregate that facility and make it? under OSHA?
It depends on what it is. If it's an underground mine and they're constructing a facility on the surface and the underground mine ceases to operate, then they're not under MSHA. The construction's not under MSHA jurisdiction. If the underground mine ceases to operate. On the surface, it's based on exposure to the miners of the mining operation. If in doubt, train them out. That's the easiest thing.
Right,
I mean, when they were building the truck shop, that new truck shop up at Kennecott, I can't remember the companies, and I don't want to even say if I did know, the companies that were working on that shop, they all had MSHA training
right.
because they're exposed to everything that's going on around that site. Frequent, extended, or regularly scheduled, sometimes irregularly scheduled, requires comprehensive training, new miner, experienced miner. And it's a case-by-case basis and not one answer fits all. If you have a question on that, call me. I will come look at it and then I will throw the hypothetical to enforcement because I'm not gonna make a jurisdictional determination. Because if something were to happen, they're gonna come back, Mike, you said they didn't need to be trained. Why is that? It's like, well, this is what it says. No, that's wrong. Okay, so I don't make those jurisdictional determinations. Based on exposure. Right there, they're berming it off. They said, this is what we're gonna do. They've, eliminated or reduced the hazards. Steve has said, yes, you can do this and they're not miners. But non-miners still have to have site specific. Under 48, I can't remember the standard. An A2 miner, 48 A2 miner, so.
So the potential for exposure is the key thing there. Is that what you're saying? So if this was, for example, at the front of the mine where you don't have any interaction with the mine operations itself, then that's a good example. But if you have to build a facility where you travel directly by the mine or within the mine to get to the facility, then that is an exposure and that's unlikely then to be treated the same way as that simple example.
Could be, yes.
Well, and with your road, it's sort of on the periphery of the mine, right? It doesn't go right down the middle of it.
We actually do work on both sides.
You're on both sides?
Of that, so that's why we've got to have it all burned off,
Okay, on both
barricaded
sides.
off to where they can't stray out of that right of way. Because we will have operations on both sides of that
Yeah.
right of way.
Tom, it looked like you unmuted yourself for a minute to bring up a topic or ask a question.
You're paying close attention, aren't you? I had a question, and the answer may have been mixed in with that last discussion a little bit, but I was just kind of curious for a site that's just historically just purely an MSHA site, that's been well established for a long period of time. Are there any scenarios or circumstances that could result in an OSHA inspector, coming in and having jurisdiction over that location or portion of that location to do an inspection or even say a post-incident type of an activity? Are there any scenarios where that can or has happened in the past?
Not that I'm aware of. There's a memorandum of understanding with OSHA and MSHA. And if it involves the mining operation or the mining process, they will defer to us. Or where you're out there at the Brilliant mine and the Brilliant mill, if you was to see an OSHA inspector come in there and say, hey, I'm gonna do an inspection, I'd probably pick up the phone and call your local field office and say, hey, what's going on here? Because I've never heard of OSHA going on to a mine site and enforcing OSHA regulations.
Okay.
Now, I take that back. Cal OSHA does go on mine sites in California. But they still follow the, MSHA regulations when they do inspect.
Okay, yeah, thanks. There's a story here, but it's like 4 or 5 decades old about something like that, so it's ancient history. Thank
My
you.
mom always told me, believe nothing of what you see or hear and only half of what you see. There's a lot of fallacies within MSHA. Like someone asked me the other day, hey, we have guns on the mine site? I says, there's nothing in the regulation that says you can't. Why would you want? But that was a question that came up. And they said, well, they've told us forever we couldn't have a gun on the mine site. Could be company policy.
Yep.
Don't know. There's a lot of fallacies out there.
Closest example I have to what Tom brought up is we have a pumping station about 45 miles away from the mine. Well, that falls under OSHA. It's not actually part of the active mine. It's far enough away that it's considered OSHA at that point.
Because it's already a finished product
Right.
and it's already left the mine site and it's going Green River, Rock Springs to your plant up
Rock
there.
Springs, yep.
Yeah, it would fall under OSHA.
Mhm.
Well, in fact, when you leave Rio Tinto, the concentrator,
Mhm.
all the way from the concentrator where the, not the pump houses, but then they have a slurry line that goes from there to, I believe, the smelter.
Yeah, so yeah, the Byron Jacksons leave there and go down to the filter plant.
Yeah, so there's a portion there that once it leaves the Byron Jackson pump house and moves further down, it becomes MSHA, or ocean, excuse me. But then once it goes to tailings, it comes back to us. At one point in time, we did inspect the power plant and the smelter and all of that, but they made a determination that it's not our jurisdiction. Just like the in situ mines out on the Great Salt Lake, going out on I-80, the solution mines, the salt mines. We don't regulate it, it's solution mining. So like Cargill and Morton and all that, Magcor, we don't do anything with them. So. just-
At all, not even part 46, they're just their own deal. Okay.
So it's just considered solution mining or in situ mining.
Hmm.
There's underground Trona mine. There's several of them up in the Green River Basin or in the basin up there. One of them just pumps water into the ground and brings that out as a solution, and that's not under our jurisdiction. There's one down in Moab, phosphate mine, does the same thing. No workers underground. It's just pumped back to the surface and they process it. That's not us. So just depends on what you're doing.
So can I ask a question? So we have a member operation in San Juan County, and it's copper mine, currently open pit mining, but they're actually, have submitted applications to do in situ mining, solution mining for copper there. So how would that work? I mean, if you've got a mine that's already, that's under your jurisdiction, but then their expansion will ultimately, it sounds like, be under OSHA's jurisdiction. How does that process work where there might be a changeover?
That I don't know. They're gonna solution mine copper.
Yeah, first
So
time in
they're
the
gonna-
state, so,
They're gonna pump
yeah, they'll pump a
sulfuric
solution,
acid down into the ground.
basically, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they've done it in Arizona. This will be the first time in Utah that they've done
Okay.
copper mining, but
it's gonna depend upon the agency. That's a jurisdictional question and I can't answer that. So I would think where it's still coming to the surface, it still has to be processed, go through an electrowind plant, SXEW and then an electrowind plant. I would think it'd still be under our jurisdiction, but I'm not gonna say.
Interesting.
That's interesting. Never heard of them doing that. So.
And when there is an operation that sort of has the dual jurisdiction like Rio Tinto or any of these others, like how do you and OSHA work together to make sure that, the operator's not, getting, I guess, sort of, getting two sets of directions that may be contradictory or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
Do you guys
Well,
have that kind of coordination?
We don't coordinate with OSHA too much. The inspectors and enforcement really know, they know where to stop. This is where we're gonna end.
Gotcha.
If it's beyond that, then, if something were to happen beyond that, then we're gonna contact OSHA if they called us and say, no, this isn't our jurisdiction. Gypsonite is, sheetrock board plants is an example down in Sagard. There's a portion of that where they're doing the mining out in the hills out there, and then they bring the material in, and then they crush and screen it and process it and make it into a powder and then put it into the board plant. Once it enters that board plant, that's OSHA. We're on the other side is MSHA, the crushing, screening, sizing, separating. So, yeah, that's interesting that in situ with the copper. Yeah, I would contact, Steve, and then he can get you in contact with the appropriate people. I mean, you said they're doing it in Arizona. You know what mine or what area?
I don't remember the name of the mines. There's a couple that I'm not recalling the names, to be honest, but.
And then I can look to see how they've enforced that with those. I mean, that's about the only thing I can do.
If I was just curious more than anything,
Yeah.
thank you.
That. Anything else on that? How are we doing on time?
25 minutes.
Anyone have any other examples or questions? Situations you're wondering about?
I was wanting to ask about powered haulage, obviously different topic, but.
No, we can go into that.
Yeah, so you understand that we've got a new, is it power haulage guidelines or set of
It's-
regulations coming out?
A lot of people call it power haulage. I did it for a long time too. It's surface mobile equipment regulation, 56, 57, 23,000. There's 4 parts to that regulation. And it's called surface surface mobile equipment program. I still call it power haulage. It's not considered power haulage. In the program, you have to identify the mobile equipment you're going to use on the mine site and associated hazards around that. You have to identify in the program what maintenance schedules you're going to use for regular maintenance and routine maintenance, what you're going to do to prevent hazards. The other one is you're going to have to investigate, or how do I say this? Look at new emerging technologies. Doesn't say you have to implement them, but you have to, look and say, hey, we looked at this, it's not
Consider.
feasible from considering. MSHA hasn't said you needed to do that. I've actually got a page I can share from the website. I haven't done a lot of training on it right now. It's mainly stuck with enforcement. The rule took place January 19th. It went into effect. It is in the regulation. You look at the 30 CFR, it's there. MSHA will start enforcing the regulation July 17th. It applies to mine operators and contractors. All contractors have to have a surface mobile equipment program, or they have to be incorporated into the mine operators that they're working.
Okay.
Can I share my screen? We good? Or you want to share it?
I want you to share it.
You want me to share it?
Practiced and did so well.
Oh, jeez. That's great. All right, so on the website, if you'll scroll down when you get there to where it says final rule, address surface mobile equipment safety. You click on that, it's going to bring up what we call it didn't work. See, you jinxed me.
It's just delayed, I think.
Okay.
It's there now.
It's going to bring up what we call a single source page, and it didn't show that one.
It's coming, it's just a bit delayed on
It's shown on my computer. There it is. Okay, it is delayed. I'm just want that instant gratification, right? So the final rule, like I said, went into place in January, and they're gonna enforce it in July. Right now, I've been looking at several plans that people have put together. I can't endorse a plan. Not one single plan can I endorse and say, oh yeah, that meets the requirement of the regulation. On the website, if you go over here on the right where it says proposed rule, preliminary regulatory analysis, templates and other resources. You click on templates, compliance assistance, other templates. There are, if it's going to pop up, I'm going to start right here real quick. See if you'll scroll up there. So there's MSHA's disclaimer. It says MSHA does not endorse any of the products, suppliers, manufacturers provided. All reference to non-governmental companies and organizations their service products or resources are offered for informational purposes only. So below here, there are some templates that industry has put out for the surface mobile equipment program. I've looked at them, like I said, I can't endorse them. But you can, if you have something you put together and you've identified what the regulation says, the 4 parts of the regulation, and have a piece of paper in a book, you're probably gonna be okay for now. But you have to update it as things change. I can point people into the right direction, but I'm not supposed to do any training on it. I just wanted to make everybody aware of where that was at.
So you said you can't do training on it and MSHA doesn't endorse it.
Nope.
Is that likely to change in the future or is that?
We
Okay,
hope.
yeah. So we're likely, so we have to develop our plans ahead of the July enforcement date. And then we're likely to have a conversation with MSHA
Yeah.
on the training side or on the enforcement side.
It'll be the enforcement side for right now, until I'm told that I can start training on it. If you sat through any of the stakeholder meetings, if any of you guys get my emails, I sent out emails for the stakeholder meetings. They reviewed this in detail during those stakeholder meetings. MSHA said they're gonna come out with a template. That's the enforcement's responsibility to come out with a template that they're gonna accept, and then you can build your program around that or your plan. National Stone, Sand and Gravel Association took it upon themselves to, as soon as it pops up there on the screen, I'll talk about it so you guys online can see it. If it's gonna go. They put together a plan and then they've sent it out to all of their members and said, hey, what do you think? Look at this, give us our comments, give our feedbacks. It's not set in stone, you have to use those programs that they provided. The National Stone one it meets, based on what I'm seeing, it has what the regulation says. Does it meet the regulation? I'm not gonna say it does, but it does have the information in there. Portland Cement one, I haven't looked at it too much. The ABC Stone one, I haven't looked at it too much. But there are examples of what other, associations and other mining companies are going to use. I did look at one the other day from a contractor that said, oh, you got 3 of the 4. You're missing this one. Well, how's the rest of it look? I says, it's there. That's all I'm gonna say. It's just the way it is. I've been told nope. As for, there's another new rule coming out, and that's the new silica rule. They say it's supposed to be out this month. That's gonna be an interesting rule to comply with. It mainly applies to mine operators. I don't know what they're gonna do with the contractors yet. And I can't speak out of school on that one either, because I didn't sit on the board when they developed the rule. So that's coming too. Anybody online have any questions about these programs? Okay.
I've got another question.
Sure.
Sorry. So you mentioned, and forgive me, I'm sure someone from Kennecott was involved in the stakeholder meetings, and so I may be asking things that have already been covered, but you mentioned we identify our surface mining equipment, and then keep that as an up-to-date list with the controls, to make operations safer. What would be the expected refresh of that plan or program, provided we have new equipment come in or controls change? What is MSHA expecting?
As things change, you have to update the plan. And that's a requirement, an annual requirement. If the mobile equipment changes, you have to update the plan. You have to have a person listed on the plan responsible to do that. I'm gonna pull up the regulation here real quick so we can review it. That just makes it easier. Now, underground equipment that is strictly used underground and is brought to the surface just for maintenance and not being used on the surface for production is not considered in this rule. But once you start using that piece of underground equipment for maintenance on the surface, or for production on the surface, then it does become part of the program.
Is there anything to share on the designation between why underground wasn't considered?
No, I don't know. So can you guys all see that?
I don't know why it's not doing it. I can try sharing mine
Here.
if that makes it easier.
No, I got it. Let's see if it'll pop up. Maybe it's because I pulled it outside of the. Let me stop sharing and share again. Maybe, if you can pull it up, it's the 30 CFR. That's what we're looking at, right? I moved that screen down. New share. There we go. I think I have it.
You got it?
Yep.
Hold on, everyone's looking at my screen now.
See if it'll go. If not,
There we go.
it's not showing everything up there. There it is. So there's the 4 parts to the regulation. Operator shall develop and implement a written safety program, includes actions the operator will take. So I need to identify and analyze the hazards, reduce resulting risks related to movement and operation of surface mobile equipment. Develop and maintain procedures and schedules for routine maintenance and non-routine maintenance. Identify currently available new emerging feasible technologies that can enhance safety at the mine and evaluate whether to adopt them. And then the last thing is train the miners. Train the miners and other persons at the mine to perform work to identify and avoid hazards related to surface equipment. In there, as we come down just a little bit. A little too far. Responsible persons shall evaluate annually any changes at the mine, and then it needs to be updated as you go along. So as we go down through this, and as soon as they turn me loose and say, yes, you can train on it, and they give me approved training materials, I'll be out to as many places as I can. I can't get to them all, of course, so share the love and tell people about it, and at least have something on paper. That's all I can say. Anything else on that? Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Any other?
You want to talk at all about recent fatalities?
Yeah,
You want to go to
would be
that
next.
next? Okay.
Can you share that
Yeah, will
slide?
you stop
I
sharing?
will stop sharing. So what we're looking at here was current today. So this year alone, we've had 3 fatalities. One fatality's been in coal, one fatality has been in, or 2 fatalities have been metal on metal. One has been machinery, and I believe 2 have been power haulage. Last year at this time, we had 14 fatalities. So one's too many. We are trending in the right direction. As you can see, last year was pretty high compared to this week. In 2023, we had 14, 2022, we had 12, 8, and then 5. We ended the year last year with 40. And in recent years, that's probably been the most that I've seen. I mean, we've been down as low as somewhere in the 20s, low 20s. And then it just spiked. I don't know what's caused that, other than I know we were coming out of the pandemic and people were ramping up and getting going again. And if we go to the next screen, if you guys can all see that, it does. This one is a daily fatality report. If you scroll over to the right-hand side there, Liz, it shows the 3 fatalities, and then it shows the classifications as the power haulage and machinery. Most of the fatalities last year were machinery and power haulage. There was some electrocutions. We did have a double fatal with a haul truck getting into power lines. We've seen 3 fatalities like that last year. We've seen 3 fatalities in bulldozers. And those 3 fatalities resulted Because the accident didn't occur because they weren't wearing their seatbelt, but they definitely died because they wasn't wearing their seatbelt. So that's another big push is seatbelt use. We talked about that earlier with the over-the-road truck drivers. Did we finish that conversation? Do you think we covered everything we needed to on that?
I think so. I don't think we had any other questions on it.
So with the take time saves lives, slow down, do the job right, and you'll be more productive. Have an accident on your site and see what happens. If you're worried about production today and you're taking corners to you're cutting corners to increase production, but have an accident and see how much production you don't get. So MSHA has been out doing impact inspections as well. There's been several of them. I know there was one done down in, I just looked at it the other day too. Can't remember what mine it was. There was one here recently done over at Beck Street at Staker Parsons. So, and they had a fatality in December with the forklift that tipped over. So, make sure your people are trained, make sure you're checking your contractors as they come into your mine site, you contractors, make sure you have your records. You're dealing with Avetta on a lot of them as well. If you have issues with Avetta, give me a call. If you know your record is compliant and Avetta is saying it's not, send me a copy of the record so I can look and see what they're looking at. And then I can call Avetta because I deal with them quite often. So I've had that issue this week. In fact, it was with another company with questionable. They were questioning the record because there was multiple things marked on it and they didn't know what they were looking at. So
Was that the fatality of Staker Parsons that was the only one in Utah last year, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the year before, we had one at one of our coal mines. I believe those are the only.
We had the one at Geneva Raw.
Okay, sorry, we don't represent the sand and gravel guys, so I'm
Oh.
not familiar with that.
That's not us,
That's
Mike.
point of the mountain.
Staker
not
Parsons over here at Beck Street, sand and gravel.
Oh,
too.
I know, I just, well, you just mentioned that.
Right.
Recently, yeah.
At the coal mine you had, was that the
The flood.
the flood,
Gentry
yeah.
Mountain, yeah.
Yeah, there hasn't been too many in the coal site here for several years. I don't deal with the coal a lot. I'm probably going to a little bit more when Mr. Sanchez no longer decides to work every day. But yeah, so that's the only ones I know on the coal side. And on the metal side, I know that Rio Tinto has had some serious accidents recently. I know cementation did underground with it was Redpath, wasn't it? With the buggy. And then they had some electrical issues on the surface. So, yeah. Just be diligent. Anything else?
Yeah, should we open up to any final questions that anyone has that like Mike to address?
I have one that I'd like to ask, and if you could just explain why an MSHA inspector would give an order instead of a citation along with the order and why they do that. I am familiar with that, but I think it's a good thing to bring up because a lot of people aren't familiar with the orders and along with the citations.
So an order, when an order is issued, it takes whatever the condition or the equipment, it takes it out of service, period. It's unsafe to operate it or taking it out of service. But generally, before an order is issued, they have to issue a citation first, generally. So what happens is Mr. Inspector comes in and say you're running a piece of equipment with bad brakes. He's gonna write you a citation because that piece of equipment was being operated with bad brakes. Then he's gonna give you an abatement time. He's gonna give you a certain amount of time to either remove it from service or correct that condition. Could be 10 minutes, could be 15 minutes, could be an hour, depending upon the seriousness of the condition. If you fail to fix that in the allotted time, he can write a B order, what we call a non-compliance order, and take it out of service. There's different types of orders though. I mean, if you look in the Mine Act, you've got a B order, which is non-compliance for a citation that was issued. You have a 107, these are sections of the Mine Act. That's an imminent danger order. That immediately takes whatever they see out of service. You have G orders, which are 104 Gs. Those are training orders where they remove the miner from working because they're untrained. You have K orders and J orders. K order, they're usually accident related. So give me an example of an order that you're talking about and why one
You
was
just,
issued.
you just answered it for me. So it was a G order that I had heard recently about. Minor was in an unsafe situation and the minor's supervisor was not in the area. So the MSHA inspector ordered this minor to leave the area.
So that's a 107A.
A 107,
Yeah, G orders are for training, lack of
okay,
training.
lack of training.
107A is an imminent danger order. The nice thing about a 107A imminent danger order is it's not accessible. They're not gonna fine you for the order. But if there's violations in conjunction with that order,
Then they'll get a
that's what they're gonna
citation.
cite you for.
Okay,
And then you can have a D1 citation, that's an unwarrantable failure to comply with a mandatory standard. So you can have a D1 citation, meaning that you knew of the condition and done nothing about it, right? And that's high negligence. Then you can have a D1 order that's issued in conjunction with that. The D1, it's if you find another unwarrantable during that same inspection, then they're gonna issue a D1 order. And every citation or every condition they find after that that is unwarrantable, they're gonna continue with that D1 order. If you just get a D1 citation, you're on that D series for 90 days. If you get a D1 citation and a D1 order, then you're on that D series until the next clean inspection without any unwarrantables. If you get the next inspection and they find another unwarrantable, now it's a D2. So it's all sections of the Mine Act. I can sit down and talk. I do supervisory responsibility classes a lot. So anybody that wants that, it'll open your eyes to when I'm talking about 104A, 104D, 107A, those different sections of the Mine Act. So if anybody needs that, don't
Alphabet
hesitate.
soup, right?
It is.
And Mike, I've heard of some confusion in certain situations with citations versus orders. And if you're gonna contest or conference those,
Yep.
what the time frame is to be able to do that may not be the same with orders versus citations, right? So you've got to be aware of that if you're gonna want to try and conference or contest those.
So the inspector will give you conference rights. He'll give you a 10-day right to conference. Conferences are informal. Within 10 days of issuance or 10 days from the time you receive a violation, you have 10 days to put your mitigators together, submit it to your supervisor or the district so that you're conferencing the citation because you think maybe something's not right about the citation or it's not valid. If you're going to contest a citation, that's when your 30-day assessment shows up. That's formal. That's where you're actually contesting what was issued and the assessed amount.
And is it different for orders versus citations?
Same thing, same process. So, but you get written a citation, you gotta correct it. Regardless of whether you believe it's right or not. You're gonna have to do something to satisfy that inspector. Because he believes, if he's gonna write a piece of paper on it, he believes that it's a violation, that it's a hazard, or it's a condition that needs to be corrected. So,
Well, are we out of time? We're to that point, probably.
You've
Yeah.
got 2 minutes. If
Have I had any other questions come in online or anything? Well, we definitely want to thank Mike and all of you for helping and participating with this. And I would just like to encourage everyone that's listening in, if you have suggestions or requests for future trainings or roundtables we do for safety trainings, please get with a member of the UMA staff so we can start looking at that as well. Liz or Brian, anything else?
thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you very much for
Thank you.
doing this. We really appreciate it. And thanks to the safety committee, to Jared and to Brent for putting this together. So I think it was a really beneficial conversation for our members. So thank you very much.